Good afternoon and welcome to episode 198 of the Tree Talk podcast with myself, Jack Neville, and Matt Callan of the Weekly Observer and Vale Star. Another busy weekend of action. We had the fourth round in the football championships, and we have the final round to come in a month's time. This week we have the return of the Hurling and the return of the Camogie. We're looking back on a very successful weekend for Limerick underage teams around the country, bringing home a couple of All-Ireland medals. So stay tuned for all that and more.
The impression the game you get out with what you put into it's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well, Johnny Buckley. To do that to Tommaso Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it hard. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
Matt, we're always talking about I suppose adding clips to that intro we have. But I suppose with the team at the weekend, 3 Limerick teams went around the country and brought home 3 different All-Ireland titles in different codes. We had the under 16s, 15s and 14s. We had the Arabom's under 15, which was the one that I think was Keane Lynch's age, won 10 years ago. With the Michael Foley, which is the under 16 tournament. And then for the under 14s, Tony Forrestal. So 3 more All-Irelands for Limerick, and I suppose that the next crop coming are shown for a bright future for Limerick hurling.
Sure, look, it's absolutely fantastic on the Jack, and it's absolutely testimony to the value of the Hurling Academy and how it is working. And I suppose the teams at this stage and everybody is deriving oxygen, from the success of the senior team, and when these young players will trace where it all started for the current senior team, they'll be saying to themselves, hey, this can be us in 4 or 5 years' time. And absolutely fantastic. You're right. They went to Wexford in the under 16, the Michael Foley tournament, and there they beat Tipperary and Dublin to qualify for the final against Wexford. Now they did a huge win over Wexford in the final, something like 5-10 to 1-7. Jack, it was a huge victory. But I suppose if there was, absolutely fantastic. But when you talk about scoring exploits, the scoring exploits of Darren Colopy from Maru Bohol in the under 16 competition, and he'll be eligible for minor this year. He was a minor last year. Were just simply phenomenal. In the 3 games, he scored 3-5, 2-7, and 3-4. 7 goals and 16 points in 3 games, which was absolutely phenomenal. And full credit to the management team on doing a great job down in Wexford. And the under 15 team, the Arabon, which is probably the big one, went to Tipperary, and they were based in Tumivara and Nina. I think in Moneygall. I think they played Kilkenny in the semi-final. And like when you talk about underage success, and you talk about Limerick winning in All-Ireland like they did earlier on this year when they beat all the counties in Munster, Galway, and Kilkenny. This was the perfect one to win as well, because in the semi-final they beat Kilkenny and in the final they beat Galway. Which was absolutely tremendous. Now, as for the under 14s, the Forrestal, believe it or not, some guy has come up with the idea that we should have a Forrestal North and a Forrestal South, and Limerick somehow were included in the Forrestal North, which was the Forrestal was always held, where it originated in County Waterford. But some guy has come up with the bright idea that we'll take the Forrestal North to Abbottstown in Dublin. So Limerick were off to Dublin and lost to Dublin after extra time in the quarter final. and then went on to beat Clare and Galway to win the Tony Forrestal Shield. So it was just a fantastic weekend. 3 teams out, 3 coming home with silverware, 2 of them with the primary silverware that was an offer. Absolutely great testimony. Well done to everybody that's involved. With the academy, Pat Donnelly, who heads up the academy, Dara Drew, Paul Brown, Pat Jones. Absolutely, this is phenomenal stuff, Jack. Absolutely, and it copper fastens the future of Limerick hurling, and like we would hope that come 2023, we will see it reflected on a good minor team. Because I suppose in 2022 our minor team wasn't as good as previous ones. Like we beat Kerry, okay, but we lost rather heavily and disappointingly to Waterford. But we would certainly be optimistic about Limerick's minor chances in 2023. And I don't want to be jumping ahead of myself or anything like that, Jack. But when you're winning an under 16, a major under 16 tournament, and an under 15 tournament. These boys will be under 17 and under 16 next year. There's going to be a fair pool of players there. So, like, it augurs well for the future, Jack. That players are coming through at the different levels.
Yeah, you don't want to get too far ahead of yourself. But as I mentioned, the last Limerick team, I presume they're the last Limerick team to win the under 15 competition, went on to win 4 All-Irelands in 5 years. And I suppose a nice segue into the current crew. We have the return of the Hurling Championships this weekend. I suppose it's headlined by the clash of Na Piarsaigh and Patrickswell on Saturday. That can be live streamed by Limerick GAA TV. You can go onto the link on Limerick GAA to watch that. But we'll start with the champions. They're out on Thursday against Adair and Ballygrana 6. I suppose they were both beaten in the previous round. Kilmallock do have that win against Patrickswell from the opener. Adair have a point on the board against a hand, but I suppose there wouldn't have been soul search from Kilmallock. Don't get me wrong, they're count champions for a reason, but that loss to Na Piarsaigh will have hurt them, and they'll be looking just to get back, I suppose, on track with a win against Adair on Thursday.
They will, Jack, because Adair would be one of the 2 teams that would be hoping to crash the 4, and of course Kilmallock will be hoping that it will not be at their expense, and the defeat to Na Piarsaigh will certainly hurt. I suppose the manner of the defeat as well, in that it came so late. But Adair always have the capacity, Jack, to put it up to Kilmallock. Kilmallock always have found Adair in the past to be very, very tricky. Now the pointers would be towards Kilmallock. As I said, Kilmallock, they can. I suppose mathematically, anyway, at least they can lose a second game and still qualify for the semi-final. But they certainly won't want to. They certainly won't want to be going down that route, because you must remember, for Kilmallock, June are down the road. So I think Kilmallock will want to get the job done, and they'll want to bounce back. They'll want to bounce back quickly. And now for Adair, of course, you see, Adair and the Han have 1 point each, and they both have suffered a defeat since that opening round stalemate. So it will be very, very important between these 2 to see if one of them can get a win, or maybe the 2 can get a win, and it would make it a very, very interesting section. But at this remove, it looks, it's very, very hard to see Kilmallock not bouncing back. But they may be put to the pen of their colour on this one, Jack.
Yeah, I suppose Adair started very lively against Doon the last time, just petered out. They will have Ronan Connolly back, who was away for that Doon game, which will be a huge boost. But we will get to our predictions as we go along later on, but it is hard to look past champions. You mentioned a hand there. They're obviously against Doon on Friday in Capmore, 6:15. You mentioned about, I suppose, the importance of getting some points on the board. Would you rather be in the Adair or a hand camp this weekend with your opponents upcoming, either Doon or Kilmallock? I suppose it's the lesser of 2 evils in a way.
Yeah, but Bodahan there this particular weekend will see it as an opportunity, maybe to spring a surprise and get in among the top four there. They're like they make life difficult, and sort a hand and Doon is an East Limerick derby, and in derbies, pride, everything, um, you know, and form tends to go out the window a bit. But um, Doon, after the first round defeat, Doon have been impressive, Jack, even though they have only one win. Because, like, in fairness, they did enough to beat Napirsik in the first round, but were caught by that whirlwind finish that Napirsik produced, and then in the second round, things went against them early on when they fell. What was it, 6 or 7 points behind, and had to come from behind. But Jack, they came from behind very impressively and very comprehensively. And you'd have to be impressed with Doon on their performance against the Dare. Now, of course, as I said, playing a hand, local rivalry, all that sort of thing will play into it. It'll probably make it more difficult for them. But it should be a very, very, very interesting game.
Yeah, I suppose for Doon as well, we haven't seen Adam English, Eddie Stokes, Kenneth Donovan yet. You imagine, they're going to bolster any lineup they go into. And I suppose for Doon, the players that fill those spots, like Jack and Patrick Cummins and Kevin Maher, that they've shown that they're that standard of player. So, there's a huge strength and depth in Doon. And as you said, they only have one win so far, but it's hard to see past them not getting a second one this weekend. The other game in the group, obviously, is the standout one, the Napirsik versus Patrick Swell. It was the final in 2019. Pat Swell won on that occasion. Pat Swell also won when they faced in the semi-finals last year. But I suppose the tide has kind of turned against Pat Swell this year with the injuries they have, and Napirsik are right back at it, and they beat Doon and Kilmallock. And if they were to beat Pat Swell this weekend, they will have beaten, I suppose, their three biggest rivals, you'd say, at the start of the year, and really laid out what they want to do for the rest of the year.
Yeah, well, Jack, they will have beaten the three teams that have shared the semi-finals with them for the last 5 years. So they will be a very, very strong position, and possibly mathematically come at the end of the action at the weekend. They won't be able to be deprived of a place in the semi-finals. And now, you're right there about Patrick Swell. Patrick Swell, Keane Lynch, we've said this so often before. What a loss he is to any team, inter-county, club, anything. And Brian Murray is a huge loss as well. The type of leadership, and like Brian Murray is a double whammy, if you like, in that they've lost Jason Gallan to fill his boots, who's had to go back from the attack. And we saw one special performance that he put on at one stage against Adair last year, I think. Yeah. And you know what he has is in his locker. Josh Considine is out as well. Now Jerome Bylan will probably be missing from the Napirsik. Jack, I've seen him a couple of times this year. I've seen him in the league. I've seen him in the championship. They seem to be single-minded about getting back getting back the Daily Cup. Any box you like that you want to tick, Jack, Napirsik ticket. I think Patrick Swell are really up against it in this one, but you don't know. You don't know. Patrick Swell won the corresponding game last year when they met in the semi-final. Patrick Swell won it, but you must remember there was a bit of a roles reversal in that Patrick Swell are without players now. Napirsik were without the Casey brothers at that stage. So it looks very much as if the pendulum is swinging back in favour of Napirsik on that one.
Yeah, but I suppose you couldn't rule out Pat Swell to upset the odds this weekend. Or I suppose it'll just give them, even if they do lose, they'll see where they have to get to. On a side note, there's so many interesting matchups when you look at those teams, and I suppose look at the Limerick team, you're probably going to get Aaron Gallan against Mike Casey inside in one full back line. And the other side then, Diarmaid Burns will be at number 6, but who marks him then? It will be the question. Like Dahi Dempsey,
probably Conor Boylan, maybe.
Yeah, or Conor Boylan or Dahi Dempsey or Kevin Downs could go in him. Like that, there's so many stars on show, Matt. I suppose it is probably Limerick's, I suppose, standout game for every year when it's a Piercing against Manchester.
This is a game with a stellar cast on both sides. Absolutely. You must remember some of the finest players, not only in Limerick, but some of the finest players that have graced the game for the last 5 years are going to be involved in this one.
Yeah,
so it's a huge one, absolutely huge.
And that's without a two-time hurler here as well. I suppose we saw that Keane got a procedure done on his leg there last week. The details, I suppose, haven't been disclosed, and there's no need to disclose them. But I suppose he's on the road to recovery anyway, which is good news. So I'd send our best wishes to Keane in his recovery.
I concur with you totally on that, and the very best of luck to Keane to get back. We want to see him hurling as quickly as possible. It's unlikely that he'll make it for the well this year, but certainly when Limerick come back, let's hope Keane will be fit and raring to go. But before we go away from Section A, Jack, going back to the first game between Kilmallock and Adair, which is on at 6:15 in Ballygran, prior to the game at 5 o'clock, there will be the official opening of the refurbished Paddy Carroll Park. I've been back there and I have seen it, and full credit to Ballygran, Castletown Ballygran GAA. They've done a fantastic job. It's a beautiful stadium to visit, and it always was, because it had that intimate feel about it. But they've enlarged and lengthened the pitch now and everything, and it is really a beautiful facility. And if anybody is of the mind to move to go to Ballygran early, the official opening will be at 5 o'clock, and certainly it is great that the occasion is marked on Thursday evening by a visit from the champions in the Limerick Senior Hurling Championship.
Yeah, we played by the Landers in the first round championship there in Ballygran, and beautiful surface. Obviously, the Limerick under 20 footballers played there as well. There's always the stand, but the surface now matches the stand. So I credit.
Oh yeah, but at that stage, it was a bit of a work in progress at that stage when Limerick under 20 footballers played there. But work has been complete on it now. It's a fantastic facility, and what an addition! What an addition to Limerick Hurling and Limerick GAA, and what a central venue, of course. Very, very central for an awful lot of games.
Yeah, we've played there a few times now. Always an enjoyable place to play. I suppose moving into Group 2, I suppose for me the standout game is the one between Kildare Palace Kennery and Ballybrown. That's at 6 o'clock on Saturday. Obviously, near neighbours. Ballybrown are 2 from 2. Have been the standout team in the division. There's no getting away from that with the manner of their wins over Blackrock and Munger St. Paul's. But I suppose KP responded to their opening day loss with a big win against South Liberties, and I don't think they'll hold any fear going into play Ballybrown this Saturday.
Not at all, Jack. And of course, it's their first year being a dual club at senior level, and I know there isn't a great crossover between hurling and football, but they have consolidated their position in football now for 2023. Like they've got 3 points, they cannot be embroiled in the relegation, and actually they're in with a very, very good chance of making it to the quarterfinals. But it will be all systems go for the hurlers this weekend, and they lost to Mungret St. Paul's, but you and I certainly, I think we both tipped that Mungret St. Paul's would beat them. My rationale behind it was, that I thought that the momentum would carry Mungret St. Paul's, and there was a bit of history between those two teams, of a history, may I say, of excellent games, and they being on a very fine edge you know, and Mungret probably is maybe having slightly the upper hand, and they lost that game, but they bounced back very impressively against a South Liberties team. You must remember that had beaten Garris-Ballan in the first round, and this is a South Liberties team that pushed Kilmallock to extra time in the quarter-final last year. This is a South Liberties team that put 5 goals past Kilmallock in the quarter-final last year. So, like, there had to be something about them. But, you know, fair credit to Kildimo Pallaskenry. I think they made a statement, Jack, you know, like, because when we were talking about this at the beginning of the year, like, we were seeing them as potential county quarter-finalists. And I think particularly in that game against South Liberties, they didn't do anything to undo that perception. But Jack, this is going to be a greater challenge. This is the greatest challenge they're going to meet, possibly in the group. Because I saw Ballybrown in the first round against Blackrock. I was hugely impressed with him. But you'd have to be impressed with the score that they put up against Mungret St. Paul's, and the way that they won it. Like they've won a couple of premier county minor championships in recent years, and these players are beginning to filter through now. Of course, we all know about Colin Coughlin and Aidan O'Connor and Luke O'Connor and these guys, and then they're fitting in nicely with the more seasoned players like Luke Dorn, Steve O'Reilly, Josh Adams. You know, look, Ballybrown look very formidable to me, Jack. But I think this is the biggest test, Jack, for both sides. I said a while ago that it is the biggest test that Kildimo Pallaskenry will have faced. Equally, it's going to be the biggest test that Ballybrown will have faced in the campaign so far. And we'll certainly know an awful lot more about Ballybrown come the weekend as to how well equipped they are, you know, to make it to the quarterfinals and progress from there and progress on perhaps maybe to qualify to get promoted to Section A.
Yeah, I suppose it's the City Derby as well, which, you know, it does bring its own, I suppose, caveat to each game, and it's one that's like mouthwatering to look at. You also have Mungret St. Paul's versus Garris-Ballan in Group 2. That's on at 6:15 on Sunday in Doon. 2 teams on 2 points so far. You can go a long way to, I suppose, knocking the other team out with a win here, Matt, because you'll have the head-to-head to them, even if you do finish level on points. For Munger, I suppose they'll be looking to regroup after the loss to Ballybrown, which was a heavy loss, and for Garris-Ballan, they got a win the last time out against Blackrock. So, you know, all these games are so finely poised. I think most of what you said for Lion Pallaskenry and Ballybrown will also apply to this game.
It will, but from a Mungret point of view, I suppose, if you want to bounce back, all right, you'll have to get in a break of a couple of weeks because of football. But the last opponents you'd want would be to be facing a seasoned team like Garris-Ballan. Like I saw Garris-Ballan. Now, Garris-Ballan lost in the first round to South Liberties, Jack, and I saw him in the second round against Blackrock, and like they were 5 points down almost going into injury time. And they hit a goal in 3 points just like that. They did something to Blackrock, something similar to what the Piercy did to Doon in Section A in the first round. Like you know, going down the home straight, you'd have given very, very little. You'd have given very, very long odds against Garris-Ballan getting anything out of it. But they have that type of resilience and they have that type of experience, Jack. That's you know, dug them out. Got him that vital victory, and of course, you see, they had it uppermost in their minds that Blackrock caught him in the Gaelic grounds last year, and beat him in the Gaelic grounds, and actually condemned him to being in no man's land at the end of the championship. But because heretofore, down through the years, Garrisplan had been a bogey team for Blackrock, but that seems to be gone out the window now. Now, it's going to be a big challenge for Mungret. Now, they've been down a couple of players, a couple of very, very important players that brought them to senior ranks, the like of Liam Lynch, and Rory Duff has missed the first couple of games. And a team coming up, Jack, certainly cannot, very, very, very hard to fill gaps created by such hugely important players that played such a part in their promotion and in their championship win last year. I think, Jack, in summary, it's going to be a difficult one. It's going to be a difficult one for Mungret St. Paul's.
Yeah,
it will be a real test of Mungret St. Paul's as to what level they have adapted to senior hurling, because they don't come tougher than an experienced seasoned team like Garrisplan. Now, Garrisplan have drawn a lot of players from back-to-back county premier minor hurling winning teams in 2017 and 2018 who are maturing now. Now, Ryan Tobin will be missing. He's out with injury, but you've the like of Mark Quinlan, you've the like of Dylan O'Shea, you've the like of Brian Heavey, you've the like of Owensy Sheehan. These players, these guys, who were involved in those minor teams, and some of them who were involved with John the Baptist in winning an All-Ireland B hurling championship. These are beginning to mature now as singers. So in terms of progression, I think Garrisplan are a good bit further down the road than Mungret.
Yeah, I suppose for Mungret, I think Rory Duff was quite close to being fit for the Ballybrone games. You'd imagine he'll be back. Liam Lynch, obviously, probably won't see him this year. But you do make a good point there about the experience of Garrisplan could nearly be enough to drag them through this game. And, one team will go to 4 points and leave the other on 2, but also have a head-to-head. So it is a crucial game. But I will get your prediction with the score and everything towards the end of the podcast. And the final game in the group, then you've Blackrock versus South Liberties on Saturday at 6:15 in Cappamore. I suppose for Blackrock, they're the only team without a point. They're, I suppose, the only team as well in the group that can cut their losses with regards to promotion if they lose this weekend. With that comes its own responsibilities. If South Liberties beat them, they'll be really looking then at relegation with Killaloe Palace, Kenry and Mungret to come. There's no easy games in Senior B, but for Blackrock, they're running out of time to get a win, but they'll see how Killaloe Palace, Kenry beat South Liberties and hopefully for their own sake try to do the same.
Yeah, Jack, I think you've summed it up pretty well there in relation to Blackrock. I have seen both their games. I came away from the first game against Ballybrone, even though they had been pretty well beaten, convinced that they were in danger. And I think I said it in this podcast. I came away after the game against Garrisplan less convinced of that. I think they may have the capacity within themselves to save themselves, because let's face it, that this is what we're into now, into that territory when you're down 2 points and everybody else, when you're down 2 games and everybody else has points on the board, Jack. And it's a game that they dare not lose. Now, they played South Liberties in the first round last year, and they suffered a very, very heavy defeat in the Gaelic grounds, but they recovered from that. And I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that that's going to be a guide to what may happen on Saturday evening. But some Liberties, Jack, they've got ambitions of their own, and they've got targets of their own. Like they've lost the game now. They lost in the last round to Kildare Palace, Kenry, and you must remember. We have to sort of disengage from the format of Section A, where there are 4 teams going through. We're talking here about 2 teams going through, which is a huge difference. And instead of getting into the top 4, you're trying to get into the top 2. And I think Liberties can ill afford, Jack, to suffer a second defeat. it will be really up to them, because you could, what they're to lose now. But take a situation. Ballybrown win, they're gone to 6 points. That would be certainly one quarter final spoken for. If Kildimo were to win, Kildimo Pallaskinry were to win, you'd have Ballybrown and Kildimo Pallaskinry on 4 points, and Liberties lose. They'd be languishing down there on 2 points. And they still have Kildimo Pallaskinry and is it Margaret St. Paul's to come?
Blackrock.
Sorry, they haven't. No, my apologies. They have Ballybrown to come. So, like, you know, it's a huge game. It's a huge game for both clubs, possibly for different reasons. For South Liberties to stay in the hunt for one of those top 2 places, and for Blackrock, you know, they daren't think about a top 2 place at the moment in the situation they're in. You know, their sole focus has to be on get the win, get off the bottom of that standings. It has the potential to be a fascinating game, absolutely fascinating game, and very, very interesting game, that one.
Yeah, I suppose it's round 3 of 5, bang in the middle. You know, it's kind of like the moving round. There's some team like Ballybrown could, as you said, kind of put 1 foot into the quarterfinal, but they could also be dragged onto 4 points level with 3 teams by the end of the weekend. You know, it's very hard to call. I will call for individual predictions later on in the podcast, but for now we'll park that there. We'll run through the Premier Intermediate for a minute, Matt, because it's equally fascinating.
Well, Jack, if you're asking me for predictions, I have been spectacularly wrong. Yeah, and the week that we didn't have predictions or have a look at them, I got all 4 of them right. So it must be something that's in the air when I'm talking to you.
Maybe we'll see how this weekend goes. We'll talk about them later on. But the 4 games: F and Newcastle Thursday in Fina, Bruff Moline the same night in Carrick Lish, Drumhead Lacca versus Cappamore on Sunday in Kilteely, and Knockany versus Glenroe Sunday at 6 o'clock in Knocklong. You obviously have Glenroe and Bruff top the table on 5 points. The Monaleen have 4, as do Effin. Newcastle have 3. Drumhead Lacca have 2 points, and amazingly Cappamore are without a point. You know, I suppose taking the 4 games on their own merit, we might just run through them quickly, Matt, and who do you think might win, because it's round 4. There is 7 rounds in the Premier Intermediate. There's more room, I suppose, for manoeuvre. There's 4 teams go through, but I suppose Effin Newcastle West firstly, Effin on 4 points, Newcastle West on 3. If Effin were to win, they could kind of put Newcastle in the rearview mirror. Conversely, if Newcastle win, they're ahead of Effin.
Yeah, that's a fascinating game, and like. I had a feeling at the start of the year, and we said it here when we were having an overview and a look at it at the start of the year. I think we named Effin as one of the teams that we would reach the semi-finals. And I've got some reason to doubt that, Jack, when I saw their performance against Bruff in the first round, which was hugely disappointing, by the way. And like they've bounced back, Jack, and they bounced back very well with back-to-back wins over Drumhead Lacca and Knockany. And you know, talking about the most recent performance against Knockany, it wasn't so much the fact that they won, it was the manner in which they won and the comprehensive manner in which they won. Now I know Knockany are struggling down there at the wrong end of the table, but to me, I'm impressed by Effin. Now, they suffered a huge defeat when they met in the semi-final, quarter-final a couple of years ago to Newcastle West, but that will count for absolutely nothing come Thursday night. I'm leaning towards Effin on this one, Jack.
Yeah, I saw Newcastle against Cappamore, and I suppose they didn't really have any right to win the game after their first half performance. I suppose first 20 minutes, but they might take the confidence from the hurling, but I probably would slightly edge towards Effin there. I mean, all these games are so 50-50. I suppose Bruff are in the same boat as Effin, a point ahead of this weekend's opponents, and that opponent is Monaleen, who were senior last year. Bruff obviously are undefeated so far. Do you think they'll keep that undefeated streak, or can Monaleen go ahead of them?
Yeah, I've seen them. I've seen Bruff, and I was hugely impressed by him. And I'm inclined to go with Bruff on this one, Jack. I think Bruff might edge this one because it'll be an opportunity to almost put one foot in the semi-final. We just have to add in the caveat. It's fine talking about Glenroe and Bruff being up there at the top of the table with 5 points. It's very, very early in the year, in the campaign rather. Only once, and that was in 2019, has a team gone through to the semi-final with less than 8 points, and that was Bruff with 7 in 2019. So, the minimum cutoff to be in the hunt for a semi-final place is 8. So you're looking for Bruff and Glenroe. You're looking at 2 more wins, which in the close nature of this competition, in which everybody is beating everybody else, it's a bit of a tall order. But I'm leaning towards Bruff in picking up one of those wins against Monaleen.
Yeah, I'd be siding with you slightly towards Bruff, but these games are impossible to call. I would go, if I was a betting man, I'd go against us and go Monaleen, but that's for a different I suppose time. Drumnat Lacca and Cappamore is very interesting towards the other end of the table. Cappamore were finalists last year. If they don't win this weekend, you've mentioned that 7-point mark. If they don't win this weekend, they won't get there, and that they won't get into the semi-finals, barring, I suppose, a number of results going their way for the remainder. Similarly for Drumnat Lacca, they're only on 2 points still. They'll be drawn level with Cappamore. If they lose this weekend, this game is winner take all, in the fact that if you lose, you're probably gone from the reckoning for one of those semi-final spots.
I think you're right there, Jack. You're absolutely right. You're certainly right in terms of Cappamore, because were Cappamore to lose this game and to win the 3 more, they'll be on a maximum of 6. Now, Drumnat Lacca, were they to win, they'd be were Drumnat Lacca to lose, rather, they would still have a potential of going to 8 with 3 more wins and still get into the semi-finals. It's going to be a very interesting game. Going to be a very, very tight game. I have a hunch, Jack. I might be very, very wrong on this, but I have a hunch that the Cappamore may launch a bid in this round, to get back, to get to the semi-final or get to the knockout stages. I think they might have lift-off in this game. And it's huge in the context of we'll say, even the bottom of the table, because were Cappamore to win, to give them the head-to-head over Drumnat Lacca down there. I know Knockkenny are in between them on 1 point. So, I just have that feeling that this might be the weekend that Cappamore would get that elusive first win.
Yeah, I think we're both kind of waiting for Cappamore to take off, as you said. And it's really, if they don't do this weekend, it's going to be too late. I think that's the big thing for them. I've seen already this year. I was impressed with them even in defeat, but Drumnat Lacca, have the impetus coming into the game. It's really hard to call, but again, slightly edging towards Cappamore. And then rounding out the weekend's action, Glenroe and Knockkenny. And you've spoken at length about Glenroe, and you didn't expect them to be in this position, level on top with Bruff with 5 points. Knockkenny only have a point, or Knockkenny have 2 points or 3. It's so misleading. 1 point, yeah. It's so misleading, this competition. But they should look at this game and say we're 4 points ahead of their opponents, and they can put them to bed, put their potential, I suppose, promotion bid on hold if they beat Knockkenny. But Knockkenny, then again, You know, they need to get started sooner rather than later. You know, all these games have pretty much the same narrative going into them.
They have now. Knockeny, as I said in the previous cast, have lost a number of players this year, and that's why they're probably in the difficulty that they're in. And Knockeny have always troubled Glenroe. Glenroe have always found it difficult to beat Knockeny. Form would suggest, Jack, that it's Glenroe's to lose this particular one, but I wouldn't see it like that at all. I think Knockeny will prove very, very tricky for Glenroe. It's a Glenroe team that's going to be without Jimmy Barry Murphy, you know, who's a bit of a talismanic figure on the Glenroe team, and indeed on the Ballylanders team. I suppose one of the best known club players in the county for what, decade and a half now. But he's going to be out for a number of weeks, and he will be a huge loss to Glenroe. But having said that, I think Glenroe are possibly focused. They have a couple of young players coming through, and they seem to be bedding in nicely into the team, and I think that has given them a fillip from last year. And of course, there is the carrot there. This is their third year at this level, at Premier Intermediate level, and there's you know, the incentive is there to get to the semi-final for a third year in a row. And you could say that the first semi-finals that they reached it in the truncated format. But this is an opportunity to match with every one of the teams in the group and still come out of the group, or come out to contest the semi-finals. I'm going for Glenroe, but you know, form would suggest that Glenroe will win comfortably. I would say not at all. I would say Glenroe will get over the line in this one.
Yeah, I'd be backing Glenroe in that one as well. That's Premier Intermediate Championship. We also have Intermediate and Junior. We just don't have the time to go through all those games till I suppose we get to the knockout stages. But for a full fixture list and previews, check out the Sporting Limerick website. You'll get all that there. We also have the return of the Camogie this weekend, Matt. We have the second round of the Senior Championship this Saturday at 6:30 in Group 1. Killeedy versus Cappamore and Cricora versus Ahan. And then in Group 2, Bruff versus the Piershig. And I suppose that standout tie, Granite Ballingarry versus Newcastle West. I suppose starting with Group 1, Killeedy, who were the winners in 2020, lost the final last year, lost their first game. You know, they need to regroup. With Cappamore also defeated in the first game. And then you would meet the first round winners, Cricora and Ahan, in the other game.
Yeah. There's a certain element of symmetry between the two groups, Jack, in that you have both winners meeting each other and both losers meeting each other, which should make it very, very interesting. Yeah, Killeedy will want to bounce back to winning ways. Right, they were very, very close in their game with Ahan. I think there was only a point in it in the finish, and like Cappamore, meanwhile, they went to Cricora and lost there, and lost by 6 or 7 points. So I think it's going to be a difficult game for Cappamore to get what would be a vital win, because Killeedy will be all fired up for this one, Jack. They you know, another loss and they're out. For me anyway, I think that Killeedy will get over the line in that one.
Yeah, and I suppose Ahan and Cricora, it's winner and you're through to the semi-final. And I suppose Ahan have been there for so many years. For Cricora, it's a huge opportunity to reach that last four. It's a huge opportunity for Cricora to get to the last four. They've had a good win in the first round. You know, at the outset, people would have been saying like that. This would be Killeedy and Ahan that would be going through, but like Cricora have had an impressive first round win over Cappamore, so basically they're nearly safe from relegation, Jack, and they have an opportunity to break into the top four. I'm not so sure that they're quite ready to do it yet. I think Ahan will win that one. Yeah, you'd have to side with Ahan just by I suppose their history and the nature of their win over Killeedy, who would have been one of the favourites for the competition. But it's pretty much a free hit with that win over Capmore in the bank. That Capmore would have to upset the odds somewhere along the lines, and Chorus will have the upper hand in head to head. So it's a free shot. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Well, of course, Niamh Mulcahy back with a hand and all that sort of thing, Jack. So that makes them more formidable. And of course, they were only beaten in the semi-final last year. They got to the semi-final last year where they were beaten by Killeedy, and they will be very, very keen to get back there.
Oh yeah, they've a huge pedigree down through the years. Into Group 2 then, as you mentioned, meeting of the round 1 losers and the round 1 winners. Start with Bruff and the Piercing. It probably would have been a game they both targeted at the start of the year. I think it's fair to say, as the one to put them into the final round with a chance of getting into the semi-final, but also would put them closer to that Senior B kind of semi-final in good stead. Bruff and the Piercing, which way do you see that one going?
I think we'll go to Bruff, Jack. From what I'm hearing, Bruff were very, very impressive in the opening round against Newcastle West, and were very, very unlucky. Now, they were 8 points down at half time. They had it clawed back to a single point when Cameron O'Leary got 4 points in a row for Newcastle West, and something of kind of a Jason Gillan effort like he did against Adair last year. But these teams met in what was a relegation final last year, a relegation final for a relegation that eventually didn't take place, as we've already flagged, as the county board subsequently, rightly in my opinion, decided that they wanted 8 teams in the senior championship, and that's what they've got. And Bruff won that. Now, Bruff have been strengthened this year, and we've said this, and from what I'm hearing as well, the 2 players that I'm talking about have made a huge difference. Mary O'Callaghan is back, the former Limerick player is back and has made a huge difference. And Mairead Ryan, like, in fairness, Mairead Ryan is coming off a fantastic year with Limerick, and she has transferred her allegiance from Clooney Quinn to Bruff. Of course, Bruff would be quite near to her. Mairead is a native of Knockany. So those 2 players, and I'm hearing it from both sides, both from the Newcastle West side and from the Bruff side, they made a huge difference in that opening round. And Niamh Ryan was absolutely in top form, absolutely in top scoring form in the first round. I'm going for Bruff on this one. Now, they won the Intermediate Championship 2 years ago. They didn't drive on last year. Back then, they were managed by the now new Meath manager, Saoirse Bulfin. Now, Piercing have a lot of young players coming up that have been involved with the county team at different levels up along. But I think it's possibly coming too soon for them, Jack.
Yeah, you mentioned that too soon. There's a lot of good underage teams that come through, but the top 4 seem to be a small bit ahead of the rest. Still, talking that top 4, Granite Ballingarry and Newcastle West are 2 teams that have genuine ambitions of winning the title. Newcastle beat Bruff, obviously, and Granite Ballingarry beating the Piercing. It's hard to go against the champions, Matt. If the accounts are right and Bruff were very good, Newcastle still got the job done, and they're still the team to beat, really.
They're still the team to beat. There's no question about it. Now, the last day they were without Roisin Ambrose, they were without Iris Kennelly, and I think they were without Roisin Mann, which would be 3 big players. And if they're back at the weekend, they'll be considerably strengthened. But on a downside for Newcastle West, Rebecca DeLee picked up a nasty injury, apparently, or a pretty serious injury in the second half of that game, which could possibly rule her out of the Granite Ballingarry game. And we know what Rebecca brings to any team at club or inter-county level, and she would be absolutely a huge loss. And I suppose coupled with that, Rebecca Noonan, I'm told, is back in the form of her life with Granite Ballingarry. Now, Aoife Sheehan is in goal for Granite Ballingarry, and We know that the level of experience and what Aoife brings to the table, just as a player and as a leader, like, and this is all set up for a real humdinger, Jack. Now, they met in the semi-final last year. I was at it. It was played in monsoon conditions behind the Newcastle West. Referee Seamus Hayes delayed the throw-in for 20 minutes while they were deciding for definite whether they'd go ahead with the game or not. They eventually went ahead with the game, and Newcastle West just got over the line in it. I think this will be very, very tight. Jack, we're talking about a team that has won All Irelands and has the tradition, has the great tradition that Ballingarry has. And whilst I would favour Newcastle West to win it, I think this is a game for a potential for a surprise.
Yeah, I still wouldn't back against Newcastle, but it should be a close game, and that semi-final was close last year in those monsoon like conditions. I think it came down to the free takers, the two Rebeccas against each other. But yeah, it should be a very good game. Moving from Camogie into ladies football, we know the state of play, I suppose, going into the knockout stages in the senior championship. I suppose wins for Mona Gay and St. Ailbe's bring them straight through to the semi-finals. Ballylanders have one quarter-final place, and the Old Mill and Drumcolor Broadford are also in the quarter-finals. There's one place to be, I suppose, decided between Fiona Casman and St. Bridget's. But you were at, I suppose, St. Ailbe's and Ballylanders. It was one that we struggled to call. St. Ailbe's just got over the line by a point. And again, it seems to be the teams at the top, are just that small bit ahead.
It would look that way, Jack. It would look that way. We'll definitely have one new semi-finalist this year because Old Mill and Ballylanders are meeting, and they were both in the semi-final. They met in the semi-final last year, so we're going to have one new semi-final. They're meeting in the quarter-final this year, I should say. So we're going to have one new semi-finalist anyway. Yeah, it was a cracking game of football, and Ballylanders were on top early on. They got hit by 2 goals in 3 minutes, just coming up to half-time by Kate Kennedy and Paula Donnelly. They were 4 points down at half-time. Now, they lost the match, but good news for Ballylanders in that former Limerick All-Ireland player, Claudia McGrath, came on in the second half after a 3-year absence, hasn't played since 2019, made a huge impact, got a goal, and was involved in everything good. And prior to that, actually, in the first half, Marie Murphy, who was one of their most experienced players, suffered an injury and had to go off. And it was an opportunity for him to reintroduce Andre O'Sullivan, who has missed the Limerick campaign this year due to being abroad, but is now back. And those two players will have benefited considerably from being involved in the game. But the game was delicately poised. It looked as if St. Ailbe's were holding on when Cathy Meehu had a fantastic game, I thought. Wormed her way through right at the last minute of normal play, and her shot was blocked, and Anya McGrath was on hand to return it to the net. It looked as if Ballylanders had game, set and match gone 2 points ahead, but Ailbe's were reading into a different script, or maybe Ballylanders weren't reading exactly the script that was there, because from a short kick out, they got their lines badly crossed. Niamh Ryan intervened, spotted the opportunity, intercepted, and planted the ball in the Ballylanders net 2 minutes into injury time, then mid-game set and match, 3-6 to 2-8. But a good game of football. Both teams would have a huge say in the eventual outcome of honours. So you have Ailbe's and you have Mona Gay through to the semi-finals. You have Old Mill are going to be playing Ballylanders. Drumcolor Broadford will be facing either St. Bridget's or Fiona Castlemahon.
Yeah, the quarterfinals are down for the 11th September. So that's the next weekend, and then the semi-finals a fortnight afterwards. So we'll keep in touch with those games. We also had the 4th round of the Senior Football Championship over the weekend, Matt. We won't dwell on it too much because we've the final round of that is, I suppose, it's down for the 24th and 25th of September. So they're a good few weeks away, but we know a lot more about the state of play. Newcastle West and Casey's were the only teams through before the round started. Adair and St. Kieran's have subsequently joined them. I suppose you were at a few games, so we might go through them. We were both in McNeville Park for Father Casey's and Galbally. I suppose it's fair to say Casey's got the job done. They weren't at their brilliant best, which they have been all year. And Galbally now face Oola in the last round, knowing that they have to win or get a draw to avoid relegation troubles.
Well, you were at it, Jack. You saw it, and there's no camouflaging it in any way, Jack. It was a very, very poor game, and if you came in and were new to the place, you'd struggle to accept that Father Casey's had won the previous 3 games, because certainly the type of form that they showed to win the 3 games certainly deserved them. Now, to a certain degree, a bit of it was down to the intensity that Galbally brought to the game, and but were unable to sustain it. Now, I probably a bit of it too, Jack, was that at the back of their heads, Father Casey's knew they were through anyway. That that it didn't matter, and sometimes if that gets into the mindset, it's hard to get it out. Plus the fact that if Galbally were appearing in McNeville Park for the second time in 3 days, and 2 days before it, they'd won a county championship. So they were going to get a certain amount of oxygen from that. They won the county premier under-19 football championship, and about 5 or 6 of those players were on the senior team. So that there was a lot of Galbally throwing caution to the wind, but as a spectacle, Jack, I thought it was a very poor game, and I think you would agree with me.
Yeah, it was poor enough there now, and the points you made there, I suppose, feed into that. Elsewhere, Monaleen beat Oola to, I suppose, keep Oola pointless, and that'll go down to the final day. But Monaleen with the head of Clahan, who were beaten by Newcastle, and I suppose if Father Casey's kind of limped into their 4th successive win, Newcastle West laid down another marker. 116 6-point winners over Clahan, who we've praised this year, in their 2nd year in the division. But Newcastle West just seemed to be that omnipresent team this year, and without Keane Sheehan, I don't think Dermot Kelly was playing either. It's early days, and they have to beat Casey to get into a semi-final. But it's hard to see anyone stopping that juggernaut just at this moment.
Very, very hard, and we spoke last week that Clahan, that they were safe from relegation, could now throw caution to the wind and give it a real go. And I've no doubt they did, Jack. But it still fell very, very, very far short of what is a very, very competent Newcastle West side. And, Clahan have to go and pick it up now for a city derby with Monaleen. And it's a straight winner take all.
Yeah.
For a knockout place. A draw, of course, will be enough for Monaleen, because I think they have a superior scoring difference. So, a very, very disappointing evening for Clahan. Very disappointing result. Confirmation of what we already knew, that it will be very, very hard to dislodge Newcastle West from top spot, and very, very hard to wrestle the Father Casey Cup away from them. There seems to be a steely determination about Newcastle West, but they're going to make it back-to-back champions, and they're really looking the part, Jack.
Yeah, I suppose they've never retained the title, which is crazy enough to think about. But we saw the Limerick Hurlers do it recently, win one, then lose it, and then win back-to-back. And Limerick obviously made 3 in a row, but Newcastle won in 19, lost in 20, won it again last year, and are the team to beat this year. That's Group 1, and we will have the preview in 4 weeks' time, as we said. But in Group 2, we saw all the games between the 3 of us on Friday.
Can we pass on Group 2, Jack?
No, we can't. But I think, judging by the scoreline, you were obviously there. Adair 1-7, Ballylanders 9. You know, I know it doesn't relegate Ballylanders. They're into relegation playoff, but that's 4 wins from 4 for Adair. You know, and Ballylanders pushed them all the way. I was following it. We were at training. I was just following my phone, and they were level going into injury time. You know, for Ballylanders, it'll give them hope going into relegation final, if anything.
Yeah, it'll give them a certain element of momentum, and of course they have another game, a huge game, coming up in the final round with Galtee Gales. A Galtee's battle that's going to be one to be not to be missed. But it was Bally's best performance of the year, probably best performance of the campaign, and you'd wonder, where was it in the earlier rounds? Because this type of performance was coming on the back of an appalling performance, and I wasn't at the game, an appalling performance against Kildimo-Pallaskenry. And you just wonder, did it need something like that to wake them up? But they were unlucky, Jack. It was a Mark Connolly free at the end that decided it. But as I said earlier on, Jimmy Barry Murphy missed the game. And you know what Jimmy Barry Murphy means to this Ballylanders team. Like he's their talisman, he's their leader, he's their captain. And I've no doubt in a tight situation that, you know, Jimmy Barry may have conjured up something to get Bally over the line and you know, possibly keep their hopes of dodging the relegation playoff alive. But the defeat, coupled with results elsewhere, with 2 draws elsewhere, was enough to send Ballylanders into the relegation fight. So, like, they have to give themselves up. They actually know that it's either Galway or Ula, which I suppose isn't a bad thing, you know. But they will be facing a Galtee Gales team in the final round. Galtee Gales team that are still in with a chance of reaching the quarter final, and a Galtee Gales team that picked up the county under-19 B championship last night.
Yeah, I suppose on Galtee Gales, they drew a KP. We'll get that game in a minute. Ballysteen drew with St. Kieran's. That leaves KP, Ballysteen, Galtee Gales all on 3 points. KP play Ballysteen, so if they win, they have a huge scoring difference comparison to Galtee Gales. So you'd imagine a win will do them. For Galtee Gales, if they win and the other teams draw, they're through. For Ballysteen, if they win and Galtee Gales win, it'll be Galtee Gales because they've head-to-head. If Ballysteen win and Galtee Gales fail to win, that'll be Ballysteen. So that's quick permutations, but we will touch on it again closer to time. But you were at the game.
All three, Jack, have a chance of making it. And that's what's making it absolutely fascinating. But I have to say, Jack, that as good a game as I have seen in the Limerick Football Championship, I saw it last Saturday night between Kildimo-Pallaskenry and Galtee Gales.
Yeah, it's twice you've said that about the Gales this year. You were at the game between Ballysteen and Galtee Gales, and you said it was, and I was there as well, obviously, it was a brilliant game of football. Is it Galtee Gales, or is it just how things are panning out? It's just they play a nice brand of football, is it?
Well, they played beautiful football against Ballysteen. Rode their luck a bit against Kildimo-Pallaskenry. Kildimo-Pallaskenry hit the woodwork 4 times, and actually hit it a 5th time when Peter Nash got the goal. It hit the woodwork and went in, but the other 4 came out, and they'd hit the woodwork 3 times in the first quarter of an hour, and having rode their luck in the spell between the final quarter, the second quarter of the first half, the second half of the first half, and the third quarter, Galtee Gales absolutely dominated and win 6 points clear. But they got a cracking goal. Sean Casey, who's been abroad for 3 years and is back with the team this year, he came on as halftime sub. He won possession within a minute of the throw-in, fed it to Conor McGrath, took the return pass and buried it in the net. 6 points up, looked as if it was game, set and match for Galtee Gales. But just as the second half wore on, Kildimo-Pallaskenry worked their way into it, And Peter Nash, of course, was outstanding. Peter Nash got a goal and 10 points and a broken nose for his trouble. He incurred the broken nose deep in injury time. But he's such an important factor for Kildare Pallaskenry. But overall, Jack, it's a highly entertaining game. Like thrills, spills, goal mouth action, you name it, it had it.
Yeah, I think our game against St. Kieran's on Sunday was equally exciting. It was going all right, but yeah, after a good start, grand old start, I suppose. It was 3-3 at half time. It was kind of the nature of the game. Then Davy Shannon scored a brilliant solo goal. Kieran responded with a couple of frees. They got level. Then they got a fortuitous enough goal, a shot for the sideline. Now, John Hayes did kick a brilliant score from the sideline, but he had won. They hit the crossbar and came out to Dylan Maloney, and he just tucked it away. But the boys were 4 points down and going into injury time, and Killian Ferris got the important goal. And I can't remember who kicked the point, but I suppose if we had lost to St. Kieran's, it would have been game, set, and match for the group as a whole. I think, or no, sorry, it wouldn't. That's the point, but it keeps us alive anyway. And there's a lot going on in Group 2. I know you wanted to skip past it. There's a lot going on in that group going into the final game, which is brilliant to have, you know, that we go into the final round, and Landers are the only team that knows really their fate. But they'll be mad keen to beat Kells, I suppose, in a local derby. But that's the senior football championship. We'll go through all
they'll
those.
be mad to beat him for a local derby and for bragging rights and all that sort of thing. But more importantly still, they'll be mad to beat him to get that bit of momentum to take him into the playoff, into the relegation playoff.
Yeah.
All right, it's a dead rubber game as far as Ballylanders are concerned, but you know, in terms of progressing up in you know, or progressing away from the bottom of the table, because it can't happen. But you know, they will need to go into the game against Ura or Galway in the best possible frame of mind and the best possible fettle.
Yeah, I suppose from a Ballysteen point of view, we'll be hoping the Highlanders do get that win and do us a favour, and hopefully we can do ourselves a favour. But that was the football. We'll be back the weekend of the 25th of September. We have a couple of weeks of hurling to get through. I suppose we'll go into the predictions, Matt, for the senior championship. We'll look at how we got on last week with the football. We went differently in the two games and finished a draw, so we got no points there. We both then went for Newcastle, Monleen, Casey isn't there. I had Casey to win by 4. You had to win by 5, so I mean you got close there. So I'm 6 points clear at the moment. Again, I don't enjoy that while I can, because last year you ran away with it. So I'll stay ahead for as long as I can. For this week and the hurling, I might just ask you to name a first goal scorer as well. I won't keep tabs on it now, but just between you and me and whoever's watching, a first I see you putting your hand in your head. You can also say no goal scorer. You can have the cop buttons to say there'll be no goal in that game. But we'll start with the big one, the Pierce League Patrick Swell. Who will win it? By how much? And will there be a first goal scorer?
I think the Pierce League by 5. If there's a first goal scorer, I'd say possibly David Dempsey.
Would you believe I had the exact same written down here? I'm gonna bump mine up to 6, because there's no point being level. First goal scorer, I'm gonna go with Aaron Gallan. So I'll go the other side. I'll go with Paswell to get a goal. Han versus Doon. I went for 5-point winners here for Doon. Does that change anything for you?
Well, I'll go Doon 4.
You had 5 as well?
Yeah.
And a goal scorer to put you on the spot.
Jesus. Who's playing? Dean Coleman.
Dean Coleman. I've gone for Pat Ryan in that one. Kilmallock then versus Adair. I'll let you lead the way in this one.
Kilmallock by 5. Shane O'Brien.
Kilmallock by 5. Shane O'Brien. Would you believe that I had Kilmallock by 5 as well? So we had all those teams win by 5. I'll bump it up to 6 again, and I will go for Oisín O'Reilly if I was going to go for a first goal scorer. moving then into the Senior A, Ballybrown versus Killian Palace Henry. And now again, you can go for no goal scorer if you want.
I'm going Ballybrown by 4.
Okay.
And if there's a first goal scorer, I'll go Luke O'Connor.
Luke O'Connor. I'm going Ballybrown +2. And I'm going to say Kyle Hayes is going to get the first goal there. Because I think KP will have to hit the ground running. So I'll be backing Kyle to go for goal early. Blackrock versus South Liberties.
I'm going for Blackrock or South Liberties by 3.
I had 3 as well. I'll leave you take the 3. I'll move to 2. I'll bring it closer. Goal scorer. Did I lose you?
Paddy Leahy.
Paddy Leahy from Blackrock for first goal scorer. I'm gonna go with more obvious choice again. I'm gonna go Barry Nash for Liberties and Mungo St. Paul's versus Gary Spillane.
I'm going for Gary by 3.
Okay, and a goal scorer.
Onsy Sheehan.
Owen Sheehan. This is the only game we're disagreeing with in terms of result. I'm going to go Mungret by 3, and I'm going to say Niall Mulcahy, who scored so many goals in last year's championship. So we both have Napirshig, Doon, Kilmallock, Ballybrown, and South Liberties. You're going for Gary's Plan. I'm going for Mungret St. Paul's. We had the first goal scorer as well, but I mean that's really only for a little bit of fun. It's kind of our catchphrase now that we say we don't kick a ball or poke a slit or anything like that.
No, we don't.
Again,
and anybody that's of the mind to challenge me about, you said we'd win or we said we'd lose, we're only giving our opinion.
Yeah, your hands are tied here. I'm going to be asking anyway, so you're going to have to give an answer. That's the weekend's games. You can get a full fixture list on the website.
Blame you, Jack. I always blame you for asking the question.
Tis easy blame me. I suppose for you this weekend, Matt, you will be over in one of your favourite places for one of the biggest games of the year outside of the GAA circles, Liverpool versus Everton, if you were to call that game.
Well, you at this remove, you'd have to call Liverpool. You'd have to say Liverpool would win it, but Everton have drawn the last 3 games, and drawn 2 of them from winning positions, which is disappointing. It'll be a tight derby. I think it'll probably be won by the odd goal.
Yeah, derbies they can go anywhere. I'll be open for Liverpool anyway, but if you were there as an Evertonian, I'd let you off with that. I'd celebrate deep down for you a small bit, but We've a load of hurling action again, and Camogie, of course. We had a very entertaining round of football, and we obviously had that very successful underage 16s, 15s, and 14s team. So we will finish by saying well done to them. The future looks bright for Limerick, which it has been for the last 6 or 7 years, which is great to see, Matt. So long may it continue because it's brought us a lot of joy. But for now, that'll bring an end to this, just under 75 minutes, Matt. A huge thank you to everyone that's watching live or will watch back. And if you have any questions, ask them. We'll get to them next week. But for now, enjoy the games. Get out to as many as you can because I think the weather is supposed to turn in the weekend. So please, God, we get one more weekend. Yeah,
it would be great to get another weekend out of it, because we've been blessed with the weather for the football matches. And you can say what you like, but it contributes. It contributes to the standard of play, Jack. Yeah.
So please God, we'll keep the weather. But for now, a huge thank you to you, Matt, and a huge thank you to everyone for watching. We'll be on again next week.
Impression the game you get out with what you put into. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Johnny Buckley to do that to Tommaso Shea. He deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the war court today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran
no sympathy in this game for any